Now, I had a very good friend who I'll call Sherlock, because he believed very much in similar philosophies to Sherlock, as in, deductive reasoning, the purity of a priori logic. I've heard him over the radio when he's being shot at and having RPGs fired at him, and he sounded as calm and relaxed as somebody on holiday in an ice cream shop, specifying what flavor they wanted, for example cucumber crisp 071, I'm under fairly heavy sustained fire, it looks like part of my fuselage just gave way, over. That sort of thing. I'm fairly sure he was slightly autistic, because he'd just wait until base told him to pull out or whatever. He also had no mercy. If he had authorization to fire, he'd light them up. No qualms, no limitations. Anyway, I've seen Sherlock quake like a fucking leaf in the winter wind. It must have been around 3 AM, and there was fuck all to do. I was playing poker against the computer and winning, another friend of mine reading Ken on my bed, when he walked into my room. Pretty unusual, because he always knocked. He delivered some supplies to an outpost about 70 kilometers away from the main base. Not deep in hostile territory, but hostile enough that you'd expect an RPG or two when you supplied them, or took out the wounded, which is mainly what Sherlock did, even volunteering to do it. He'd sat down in the afternoon, and helped unload the supplies, mainly medical, ammunition, and tools, and stuck around taking requests from the CO, who was running low on water and water purification tablets. A few privates were on duty in the dusk, and one of them freaked, saying he could see something through thermals that he couldn't see in person. This piqued Sherlock's curiosity, so he had a look. Sure enough, when he looked through thermals, he could see the shape of a man about 200 meters down the path, but looking with binoculars, couldn't see anything, even with night vision. This is quite common in Afghanistan. It's reported uncommonly. Despite being an uncommon event, it's always quite unnerving when it happens, but according to Sherlock, he wasn't unnerved, just his deductive reasoning pricking up. First he thought the thermals were dodgy, so he used another set, then another set. Then he thought the binoculars were bad, so he used another pair, which weren't just thermal imaging, but infrared night vision. Rather than the shitty green-tinted type, it was a grayscale type, which showed significant detail. Now, on the infrared grayscale he could see it. Apparently it was a human in everything other than having a head. The body was human, perfectly proportioned, but there was no head. Now, the other night vision didn't show this. Sherlock, armed with nothing other than our standard issue Browning high power, and probably just a single magazine, strolled 200 meters down the path, to see if he could see anything. Apparently not, though he said it felt unusually chilly, and he did feel quite uneasy. It was on his way back, when he heard soldiers shouting. Looking behind him, he saw 4 or 5 putrefied bodies shambling after him. He described the smell as rancid and their look as if they had contracted the vilest leprosy. They were moving pretty quickly, and he could see body parts, fingers, hands, even an entire arm, drop off. When he said they were like the Walking Dead, I felt a chill go up my spine, and my friend reading Ken actually looked up at us. Sherlock said he shouted a warning to the bodies, apparently rotting as if dead for a few days, appendages and torsos swollen from the sun, and as they continued to gain ground on him, began opening fire. Despite one of them being hit several times, losing most of its shoulder, and through the stomach, it single-mindedly continued pursuing Sherlock, who, for the first time ever, sprinted away. A rifleman at the outpost shot them with a more high-powered weapon, and re-killed? One of them. As soon as one of them went lifeless, the others would single-mindedly stuff their faces full of flesh, just tearing it off limbs and bodies. No shame, no disgust. Like they hadn't eaten for days. At this point, the fellow reading Kant piped up. He'd heard of similar stories in his journeys to outposts. Some American soldiers, badly injured and delirious in the sun, told him how they had seen their brothers in arms set upon by filthy mujahideen, and ripped apart, alive. Limbs ripped from bodies, heads from necks, and how they would rip the flesh off with their long nailed fingers, gouging it out, or bite it off the bones. They had said only fire or high-velocity weapons, not small arms, could stop them. Afghan soldiers, when mortally wounded, prefer to kill themselves than be captured, because they've heard the stories and know the folklore. It is true they kill themselves. I've seen it. I must also admit, as I became more experienced and hardened to the oddness of Afghanistan, I also heard quite a few of these stories myself, to the point where they don't even worry me anymore. I think I even saw a herd of them rampage through a village. But it's Afghanistan, so they could have been tripping on opiates.